This is JCU Conversations, a podcast show from James Cook University, Singapore. Tune in as we ask experts in the industry more about their lives and their approach to success. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Dr. Manisha Agarwal, business lecturer at James Cook University, Singapore. Our guest today is Professor Abhishek Bhati. He is the campus dean and head of learning, teaching, and student engagement for the Singapore campus of James Cook University. His research interests lie in tourist behavior management, resilience planning, and scholarship of teaching and learning. Welcome, Abhishek. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Manisha, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, Abhishek, I know it's a big job that you're handling. So, why not we start by asking what is on a daily basis? What does your campus dean responsibility look like?
Well, it is. It's a lot, to be honest. But yeah, in a layman's term, campus dean role is starting from admissions, enrollment, making sure that students go through all the learning and teaching, go through the classes, the assessment, and make sure that they graduate towards the end. The important thing is that I want to ensure that we have proper systems of checks and balance for academic governance, part of the operations, so that the students are getting the best deal, what we have promised them.
All right. So that means you're handling the students from the very beginning when they step into the university and the point when they graduate, if am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's all the way from admissions to the point that they graduate.
Sure.
And I think it's good to have that oversight of how these students develop over time,
Yeah.
how we value add to these students who come not just from Singapore, but from many other countries in the region.
Yeah.
And when they come to Singapore, they're new to Singapore. Some of them have traveled overseas for the very first time.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that they're comfortable,
Yeah.
they're taken care, they know what to expect from the university education. When
course.
they come onto the campus, the experience that they want to have in the classrooms, how they familiarize themselves with the content, with the teaching faculty, other support systems on campus. And it's not just about learning, it's also about having fun, making friends from, students from other countries, getting involved in the range of campus activities.
Yeah.
So we need to work together with other departments on campus so that we can provide holistic learning experience to our students, however long they stay with us, And these students, they sign up for, it's not like going for a movie for 3 hours or 2.5 hours, but they sign up for a few years with JCU, and it's a very important phase of their life. So we need to take care of that.
Awesome. That's very amazing job that you're doing. So, Abhishek, can I check with you? What was your inspiration that led you to do your research interest in tourism behavior and management? Can you share with us?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. That goes back a few years, even before I started on my PhD. My PhD, or my initial research is on vandalism. So vandalism is about crime by tourists. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of research done on crime against tourists, where tourists have been the victim. But here, what I was studying is that how tourists themselves are the perpetrator. They are the ones who have been responsible for vandalism, so such as graffiti. In some places, graffiti is normal, but in other places, it's not. Littering, breakage, and other forms of antisocial activities, and that these tourists get into. So, being a tourist, avid visitor myself, so when I visited several other tourist destinations, I saw some fellow tourists not behaving in the way that they're protecting the tourist element, the tourism elements where they're visiting. I'll give you a good example. When we visited the Great Barrier Reef, we had several tourists from other countries who would snorkel next to the reef, and they would use their, the paddlers so vigorously that it would damage some of the corals. So you got to be a little bit considerate. And then being in academia, I was chatting with one of the professors who eventually became my supervisor, Professor Philip Pierce. He passed away a couple of years ago, God bless his soul. But I was chatting with him and he said, Abhishek, this is a very good topic. Do you want to do more research and pursue a thesis in it? I said, wow, that's great. And that's history. And that's where I started my journey on tourists and tourist behaviors. And over time, I worked on several other projects looking into how can we manage tourist behaviors so that tourists themselves can be responsible for taking care of the environment, the host community which they're visiting,
Yeah.
and also protect the tourism features for the next generations to come by. So
Yeah.
that's an element of sustainable tourism as well.
Wow, Abhishek, I think you are lucky one of those, who always have this aha moment to start their research. So that's nice to hear. So Abhishek, the one of the topic that recently we are facing about climate change, everybody is talking about climate change. So what do you think? What is your views or perspectives about climate change or low carbon tourism? What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, climate change, in my opinion, it's for real. It is happening. What are the reasons for it? Let's not get there. Some people say it's evolutionary, others say it's because of human activity. But there is marked changes in climate, and tourism has a role to it because tourism is part of consumption.
Yeah.
It consumes. When a tourist goes to the environment, to a new tourism place, they consume activities there.
Yeah.
There's food and beverage consumption. There's consumption of energy, which
Yes.
is electricity, water, other forms of energy. And sometimes when you are, as a tourist, you think that you could let yourself loose and you could be a little bit more carefree in your consumption of these things. So when people stay in hotel rooms, they might not switch on the aircon or leave the water running for a long time, or
Yeah.
keep the shower on for a certain period of time. Or when they go out to restaurants to eat, they might order more than what they can eat, and that might
Yes.
lead to excess wastage. Many restaurants, they provide food for buffets and others, and a lot of those food then get wasted. Just a few examples that
Yeah.
how every activity leads to carbon generation and adds to the carbon footprint. So one of the things that I'm working with my fellow colleagues is looking into low carbon tourism,
Yeah.
how we can develop a range of activities, so that can reduce the carbon footprint that tourists are generating. They're still having that the fun and joy and the escape factor which they're looking for in tourism, still have experiences which they want to have,
Yes.
but have low impact of their activities. Another pointed impact, which is going to bring me to the next point, is travel, air travel. So whenever
Yes.
people are traveling, especially long haul travel,
Yeah.
there's a lot of carbon
Carbon
generated
emission.
through the
Yes.
fuel that's burnt in airlines travel. So now I'm in a conversation with Singapore Tourism Board and the local media of developing, the southern islands of Singapore into tourism destinations. So I've
Wow.
more recently I've spoken in Channel News Asia, as well as writing a piece in developing southern islands. Now this is more close to Singapore, and
Yeah.
those who are in Singapore would appreciate what I'm saying. Islands like Kusu, Lazarus, St. John's, Sisters Islands, and there are six range of these islands where you could develop these islands into special interest tourism.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, but also it's not just these islands are for attracting international tourists, but become a destination for domestic tourism,
Yeah.
where Singaporeans don't have to go overseas,
Yes.
and they can just get on a ferry and go to these islands. They can either go for day trips, go there,
Yeah.
have a family picnic, or some islands can develop accommodation on those, and then the accommodation can people can go
Can
there and stay there
stay.
for
Yes.
weekend stay. And what does that do? That makes it for Singaporeans, for people from the region. They can go to a tourist destination which is nearby.
Yeah.
They don't have to travel far
Far
away, so it
away.
saves time, saves money. It has less carbon footprint, and each one of these islands could be developed for specific activities.
Yeah.
Like for example, Sisters Island has a good ecotourism,
Yes.
or environmental friendly environment, so they can develop into marine reserve. Whereas Pulau Ubin has a very nice nature reserve, Czech Java, that could have a marine footprint. Lazarus could be developed into an example would be looking into water sports and other things, so
Yeah.
that different types of tourists can go to different islands. And this will also help attract international tourists, because
Yeah.
one of the things that STB is trying to do is grow the number of tourists coming to Singapore,
Yeah.
and make them stay longer in Singapore. So this becomes added
Exactly.
attraction for those people.
Yeah.
I recall going to places like Thailand and Philippines and go island hopping.
Yeah.
Get on a ferry or a speedboat and spend the entire day just island hopping. Why can't we do it in Singapore? The same thing.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very inspirational, Abhishek. And, that leaves me thinking, how do you, because you're doing such inspirational research, how do you inspire your own students, or you try to engage them or foster the passion of learning and teaching and tourism related research for them? How do you try to achieve that?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. And probably, in order to motivate someone, you have to reach out to their own motivations.
Agree.
What's in it for them? Why would a person do research? Why should a person learn about a specific content in a subject or a course? So if they really need, if they identify or they know the benefit of what these subjects or the content will give them, whether it's employability, whether it is giving them more knowledge, whether it is making them better person,
Yeah.
both individually or professionally, then they feel more motivated. So whether it is young students who are out of high school or mature students who are doing a master level sub course or even a PhD, if they feel they're motivated, they will automatically be engaging. See, education at any level, it cannot be one way. It has to be a two-way process, because
Yes.
the teachers and academics can do as much. At the end of the day, the students need to play their role as well. And
Yeah.
and if both parties know what is expected of them, if both parties play the role, then the outcomes of education will be there. As I said, the outcome could be anything, could be
Yep.
employability to just creation of knowledge. So I try to do that. I try to create right expectations. I try to work with my colleagues and in also training them so that they set the expectation with the students, and at the same time they also deliver what the students expect of them.
Yeah.
So then there's congruency in the role and expectations.
I think, yeah, what you said is very important. I think is makes sense that setting the right expectations is very important, and I think that has been one of the key factors setting JCU Singapore students for success, I would believe. So Abhishek, as you know that JCU Singapore is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. So can you reflect on the university's journey since its founding and the key milestones that have shaped its growth and success?
Yes, absolutely, Manisha. Yes, JCU is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, 2023. And, of course, there are many colleagues who have been here longer than I have been, but I consider myself as part of the furniture here. And sometimes I'm older than the furniture. I've been here several years, and I have
Yeah.
seen the organization grow from where it was to what it is now. So I know in 2003, when JCU started, we had less than 60 students, and today we have
Yeah.
about 4,500 students.
Yeah.
When I joined 16 years ago, that seems like a long time,
Yeah.
we had about 600 students. And again, we have grown about 6-7 times in the last 2 decades, I should say. So when I was there, about a decade and a half or 15 years. And what we did in this journey, while I have seen, is that JCU was always here to contribute to the talent pool that
Yeah.
Singapore and the region wanted. So we started with clinical psychology because there was a shortage of clinicians in Singapore. We looked at developing a range of psychology courses so that we can develop a steady stream of graduates who are good at research skills, because psychology gives them that good research skills. Sometime back, Singapore was having issues with counselors, so we launched our Masters of Guidance and Counseling. There was shortage of early years teachers. We launched our Bachelors of Education, which focused on early childhood education. And more recently, there's been this conversation about food security, how Singapore, being an island nation, can be self-sufficient in food needs.
Yes.
Well, it's difficult to be self-sufficient,
Yeah.
but how we can make more progress.
Yeah.
And then JCU then launched aquaculture,
Yeah.
growing fish for food, and creating, white fish being probably the most sustainable source of natural protein. There are other ways of getting protein, no doubt, but that's one such way of doing it. And we we are probably the front runners, not just in the region, but globally in terms of aquaculture and aquaculture
Yeah.
research. And that's what we're doing here. So
Yep.
some of these examples just state that, we as a university are in Singapore for the long haul. We have contributed to the talent pool of Singapore and the region. As I mentioned, JCU has about 4,500 students. 2/3 of them are international to Singapore.
Yes.
So that means we also, adding to the talent pool and knowledge contribution
Worldwide.
to other countries, in the
Yes.
region and beyond. Mostly Asia, but yeah, we also get students from Europe and some from other continents, but primarily Asia. And so that's I take great pride in, that we have graduates and alums not just in Singapore or back in Australia,
Yeah.
but in other countries as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing, Abhishek. So, Abhishek, do you want to share any memorable stories or anecdotes from your time with JCU that is more personal to you with JCU?
Well,
Don't get me
there could
started.
be plenty, in terms of memorable incidents and so forth. But one thing that I really recall, I'll talk about two incidents here.
Yeah.
One is both related to graduations,
Yeah.
because graduation ceremonies are probably the happiest moment that any university or any academic could have. So, one such graduation was where we're having a lot of graduates come through. And this was probably our first graduation ceremony in person after the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
And I think a lot of graduates, they were very excited. And there were some who, as they walked across the stage, they were jumping, and some were using different antiques. So the entire crowd, because graduation is supposed to be a very formal affair, so the entire crowd became, very livid, and they were laughing. So we academics on the stage were also, very excited about how these various graduates are being more expressive, and
Yeah.
some of them are dancing, some of them are hopping. There's one who became a fish, and then they kept jumping on the stage. It was just amazing how these graduates, were celebrating their
They're
moment,
fine, yes.
in person again. So that was wonderful experience. The other experience is my own experience when that goes back a few years when I did my own PhD, and I was going through the graduation, and I'm a JCU alum as well. I did my
Wow.
PhD with JCU, and I graduated here in Singapore. So when I was going through the stage, it so happened that when the name is called, then the crowd would just applaud,
Yeah.
and then of course the applaud will die down with time, and the person will walk to the chancellor, and the chancellor will award them with the testema. But I just kept waiting and waiting and waiting for people to stop clapping and applauding, and that was an overwhelming moment for me.
I'm
But that
sure.
just didn't stop, and that's
Yeah.
simply because a lot of people who are graduating students, I had taught them, so they knew me, and
Yeah.
all the other people in the audience were my colleagues as well, and even behind me on the stage there were a lot of other colleagues. Again, that was an overwhelming moment for me, and these are some memories that are going to stick with me forever, Manisha.
Wow, that sounds so beautiful and an amazing time while you were graduating, Abhishek.
Yeah.
So, Abhishek, can I ask you, that another question which is a bit different, that, celebrating diversity and inclusivity is the talk of the, whether it's academy or industry or wherever. So, what do you think? What is JCU Singapore's approach on diversity and inclusion? How do we encourage best practice, such practices in JCU?
I think it's a very good question, Manisha. And the way I would like to answer it through our values, and I would like to highlight two main values here. One is respect. Respect is where you respect people from, diverse backgrounds, whether cultural, religious, demographics, learning needs, any other forms of
Yes.
differentiations or markers that we can differentiate individuals. So that's important. Recognition for everyone and respecting them for what they are, that's crucial. Another important value that JCU has is integrity.
Yeah.
Whatever we do it with integrity. So you don't focus on the student and the background or where students comes from, but we look at the need and how we as educators need to impart knowledge or to help students with their learning needs or any other issues that the student have. So if we live our values, we definitely are able to be more inclusive, more diverse. And I guess our current student body is a testimony of that.
Yeah.
We have students from close to 50 countries.
Wow.
And it's not just the student population, even our staff, both academic staff as well as professional staff. They come from very many different countries. So my own teams, when I go into meetings, you have at least 5 or 10 nationalities in a meeting room. When you go in a classroom and you talk to students, there are 10, 15 nationalities in a classroom. So that adds to the diversity and the richness of the conversation, but they also inculcate the value of inclusiveness. Our students become more aware of the differences they have and how they respect each of those differences and continue to embrace differences. And I think that's really important in celebrating diversity.
Yeah, I think Abhishek, in current context, we can keep talking about diversity and inclusion. But
Absolutely.
I think let me ask you the very last question now. That looking ahead, what are universities or your aspirations and goals for the future as the university embarks on the next chapter?
Yeah, so JCU has been in Singapore for 20 years, and I'm sure there would be many more decades that JCU will continue to contribute to higher education landscape in Singapore and the region. And what we have always done, and as which is consistent with JCU's purpose or mission, as you would say so, is the two main pillars of research and, of course, education. Through our graduates, how we can continue to add to the talent pool. Through our research, how we can create more knowledge, how we can celebrate creativity, and make the world a better place for everyone to live in. The university is always focused on specific region, geographic region. In other words, you can call them tropics. But yeah, as tropics becomes our immediate context.
Yes.
But of course, that doesn't limit us to the tropics, but how we can contribute to the tropics and beyond. And I'm sure JCU will continue to do so here in Singapore and, of course, through operations back in Australia.
Wow, so the future looks bright for JCU Singapore and JCU Australia. Abhishek, can I ask you one more question? Let's say, if you are given an opportunity to go back in time, let's say when you were 21 or 25, what is the advice that you want to give to your younger self?
Okay. So 25 was like last year for me, is it? Just
Yes.
joking. Yeah. Yeah. See, it's always good to reflect on your experiences and how you would do things differently, when you were much younger. And then my advice to a younger Abhishek, which was 2021, or probably even others who are going through that phase now, is not to take things too seriously. It's really important to do what you want to do, follow your passion, and then keep doing what you want to do. Don't worry so much about the outcome, because if you do things with passion and you're committed, then the outcomes will be good anyway. So if you worry too much about the outcomes, then you do not put 100% in the actual thing that you are doing. So enjoy life, where possible, make new friends. Networking is crucial, very important. Make new friends, and as they say, people are as good as the friends that they have. So that's again a very important advice to a young Abhishek or to youngsters who are going through that process. Always be on a lookout for people who are like-minded, people whom you like to be, so that they can become a coach, a mentor, or a good friend to you. And follow your passion, continue to do what you're doing, and if you continue to do it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you will see success at the end.
Wow, that's a fantastic message for our younger generation. So, Abhishek, this has been a wonderful discussion, and it was a great pleasure to have you here. And I really thank you for joining us today. Before we part, can I please request you that would you like to share with listeners how they can reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me, the simplest way is come to JCU Singapore campus and we can have a cup of coffee together. Yeah? But there are other ways as well. I'm active on LinkedIn. We just look for Abhishek Bhati JCU, and I'm sure you'll chance upon my profile. There's a JCU profile as well on the JCU website through which you can also reach out to me. And some of the academics, if or researchers who are keen to engage in terms of research and so forth, look for my profile on ResearchGate, or even in other Scopus and Google Scholar. So these are just some platforms where I can look into it. I'm also the regional vice president for ITSA, International Tourism Studies Association. So through that also becomes an opportunity to engage in research, and happy to look into research, whether it's about tourism or about scholarship of learning and teaching, mostly student experience, but that's what I usually work on, Manisha.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you for sharing all these ways to connect with you. And I'm sure our listeners will find a way to connect with you and make use of the research expertise that you have. Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you again. It was lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.